I mean, some people have like it like all like laid out and stuff. I mean, I guess they're professionals, but we're not. You're listening to Dots, Lines, and Destinations, a travel podcast with hosts Stephen Seagraves, Fosma Moon, and Seth Miller. Hello, and welcome to episode 333 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. Oh, that's a fun one, 333. Just, double that, and we'll be at episode 666. How you guys doing, Foz, Seth?
You've been busting out that awesome math skills this afternoon.
I can add, so
or multiply by 2. Did you add or multiply? I mean, this is a big question.
I mean, they both work, so yeah. Right.
And we're off to a good start.
This is what you get when you're married to a math teacher.
I'm not even going to say anything.
How you guys doing?
Peachy.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really complain.
Yeah, Seth's working on an outdoor table.
It's done. It's finally done. It's gorgeous.
So we had to get our woodworking update.
Yeah. Now, the table's done. Built a sort of tchotchke hanging shelf unit for my sister-in-law because she wants it, and so whatever. Who am I to judge? Yeah.
Are you selling the table? No,
that table's sitting on my front porch now.
Oh, okay.
That's for me. We screened in our front porch this summer or this spring.
Okay.
We tried one of those mesh tents last year in the backyard to keep bugs off while we were eating outside, and it was mostly effective, but a little bit of a pain in the butt to get in and out with the zipper. And then we had one storm blew through and just threw it across the lawn like it was nothing. So that ended badly, and now we decided that it's unlikely that our front porch will blow away. So we tried it, and then I was like, it wouldn't be that hard to just put some windows around the existing frame, but the city thought otherwise. They told me I needed permits and all sorts of other stuff going on, and had to truly rebuild basically a room there, and that got to be annoying and expensive, more expensive than I wanted to be in a hurry. So we actually just bought a 50-foot roll of screen and cut to shape and put Velcro on it so it can go up for the summer and come down in the winter. And
I like it.
Yeah, hopefully it'll last. We'll see. It's been up for a grand total of 3 hours now that we're recording.
Well, isn't it funny how dealing with city permitting is the bane of our existence?
I was just shocked that I bothered to ask. That was a little surprising to me. But also that they required one for that kind of work. And I sort of get it. I am closing in a space, but it was a 3-season room. It wasn't insulated. It wasn't changing electrical or plumbing or anything like that. But it was just structural enough that they wanted something. So
yeah. Here, so we're thinking about putting a new fence in the backyard, which will probably go with something composite and not wood, because the composite right now is cheaper than wood.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And I found out that anything over 7 feet you have to permit, but it can only be a max of 8 feet. So for that extra foot, you have to get a permit, but you can only max.
Yeah, so I would be thinking that 7-foot fencing is just fine.
Yes, that's what we're going with.
Do you need a permit for a moat?
Actually, for hedges, you do. If you're going to do decorative hedging around to keep people, sound and people from coming to the fence, you do, which I also find ridiculous. I also need a permit to tear down the trees that are considered an invasive species. But whatever. Anyway, let's talk about aviation. How about that?
More government bureaucracy.
Just some quick follow-up. There was a comment on the video that we put in the show notes. It was my video from Chicago O'Hare. Someone left a comment on the video saying that the tug that's actually being used there is the wrong one for the 777. It can't push that amount of weight.
And didn't it demonstrate that when, in fact, it couldn't push that amount of weight?
Exactly. So
it did look like a small tug. I don't know the details, but
yeah, I think it was 10,000 pounds. It can only push 10,000 pounds less than the 777 as a max, and it was probably beating up the gearbox trying to push the 777. So thanks for the comment. I think it was Dustin left the comment. I'm not 100% sure, but Seth, more max issues.
Yeah, it's exciting. The electrical ground issues, right? So it's not all of the Max have been regrounded, and this is a weird use of ground and ground, I guess. Sorry. A couple weeks ago now, Boeing acknowledged that there was a problem with electrical ground pathways in newer builds, and I think it came down to they switched from rivets to screws or vice versa in holding some of the components together in the flight deck, and that changed how it was secured and where the electrical grounding, I guess, passed through that and something. I don't have all the details, but it was bad, and there was a risk of a short, either messing up the computers or otherwise breaking things on the flight deck, and so the company notified all the airlines flying those aircraft and told them to stop flying them, and so a subset, and it was newer builds, or builds that happened after the initial grounding related to the crashes. So it was, so older whitetails that had already been, or not whitetails, older undelivered planes that had already been built, or planes that weren't, that were waiting weren't necessarily affected, but a lot of these newer ones, all the newer build deliveries have been affected, and so it's an interesting split. But now these newer planes, not only are they grounded because of this, the FAA put out a airworthiness directive, basically saying, we expect it's going to take a couple hours to fix, this is what's going on, here's like sort of laying the framework for what the resolution is going to be, but also acknowledge that it was still waiting on Boeing to get it the final paperwork of like what the fix is going to be. So that was another sort of cart before the horse interesting situation. But then it now sounds like Boeing is going back, or excuse me, the FAA is going back and saying, why don't you double check that really nothing else is going to be affected and get us a list of all the parts, not just the ones that you knew of. That might have electrical impulse sort of ground pathways affected by this. And so it's, not going to, well, we don't know if it will or won't, but I think it's just slowing down the recovery process in terms of getting a list of like what the airlines need to do to get these planes back into service.
Wow. Are they actually, so I mean, they've delivered some of these, right? Because like I've seen, there's a United plane that's stuck here at PDX.
Yeah, there's 100 couple of Alaska 150, ones. I think, out in the world.
Yeah, so it was interesting when I was out at PDX. I saw them parked out there with the engines covered and kind of just, parked away from everything.
One of them, I think an Alaska one, got ferried the other day.
Okay.
So there must be some special dispensation for that sort of thing. Went to Oklahoma City, of all places, I think, maybe.
That's where they have a maintenance base, right?
I would assume that's why it went there, but...
That's where, doesn't AA do something there too? They do something.
That's Tulsa.
Oh, Tulsa. Okay.
American has a huge MRO facility in Tulsa. I think it's like the biggest in the world.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe they're getting ready to Maybe they're getting ready to start flights from Oklahoma City with this new Max. So I mean, on top of this, United is getting some Max 8s.
So this is something, I actually sort of reported this a while ago, indicating that it was probable, but the company never confirmed it until last week, acknowledging that apparently they picked up some whitetail Max 8s. Whitetail meaning planes that were previously built and ordered and then built for a specific airline, and then that airline decided not to take them up. I'm not sure who United, but it means they didn't get them much faster. And United seems keen as the recovery progresses to get these newer planes and potentially retire some older ones. I'm going to be curious to see what they retire as part of this, right? Because they also said that they're going to be upgrading the IFE system on some of the older 737s. I'm assuming it's like the live TV planes that have the screen still. They're getting AVOD, video on demand, real IFE on board, and keeping screens as part of that retrofit. I'm wondering if this means some 319s or 320s go away.
Didn't they just...
And the company switches more towards Boeing again.
I mean, it's possible. I think some of the 319s and 320s are newer than some of the older 737s, right? When you think about some of the original 8s, they were delivered in 98?
Yes.
So it might be... I mean, the 319s and 320s are generally newer than that.
And didn't some of the 319s come from one of the Chinese carriers?
Yes. Southern, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting development. I know that they've been keen on, they've updated the 737Gs, the 73Gs, right? And that's what they're using on some of the hot and high stuff. But they also don't they have like max gross weight 737-800s that they can use on that kind of stuff?
You mean SFP, like the short field performance?
Yeah, that's the ones I meant. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So
don't they have those?
You want them lighter, not heavier?
Yeah, exactly.
They definitely have some with the short field performance kit, which gives them, I guess, an engine boost and maybe something in the brakes to help them get off, if the case they had to stop, but helps them operate tighter airports.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, what's the goal, right? They don't need to add planes just for the sake of adding planes. They're gonna, like you said, they have to get rid of something. It doesn't make sense to just keep a bunch of jets that they're not going to fly. Any thoughts, Foz?
I mean, if they're cheap enough, why not stock up?
Yeah, if you're already paying for the storage, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they start phasing out some of the 738s, right? A bunch of them are probably coming up for C&D checks, and it probably is cheaper to replace them rather than go through the C&D checks.
Yeah.
Didn't we go through the valuations a while ago? I guess. I mean, I know we did, but I don't remember. Were there single aisles in those leaseback, or not leasebacks, but in the the bond issues where didn't they have like 757s or 767s that they were saying were only worth like $2 million?
Yes.
So I don't remember if the 737s were in that list or not.
Yeah, I don't remember the details.
It's interesting to me. I think really what it comes down to is just a bigger push towards getting moving more towards Boeing or staying in the Boeing world. Was it the A319 additional use planes got canceled also?
Thought so, yeah. They're not taking them. Yeah.
So that was another.
What do you think, like, is moving more towards Boeing, right? I mean, they don't have the only Airbus in the fleet. The only Airbuses in the fleet are really the 319s and 320s. Everything else is Boeing, except for their contracts with the.
They do have some 321s and LRs and 350s in theory on order.
Yeah, but what are the odds of them taking that? That's kind of where I was going. It's like, what are the odds? Because like they don't have a 757 replacement really. They talked about the MAX 10 being that and putting lie flat seats for transcons.
That's for transcons, yep.
But they don't have transatlantic,
Wasn't that the 321 order, though?
Yeah, the 321 LR was supposed to handle the transatlantic markets.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting, obviously, the plane can do it. It can do it pretty well. I still wonder, and I know that the 321 LR is a much lighter plane and has great capabilities. I just wonder, I still am pissed that there's not a lighter, shorter range 787-8, like the Dash 3 what was supposed to be, with the fewer fuel tanks and lighter max gross weight, and it would have been perfect for the 5,000 mile range trips or 4,000 mile range trips that the short transatlantic stuff needed, and would have been a way more comfortable, way nicer experience than
the 321s. Yeah,
I mean, the 321s. You look at the JetBlue configuration, and United has XLR, not just the LR. But the configuration is on JetBlue is 24 business class seats, and that gets you all the way to the exit row. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's basically what the 763 High J is, too, right? It's business all the way to the exit row, or premium economy, maybe a couple rows to get you there.
Yeah.
Or to the window. Overwing exit or windows there. But, it's the same idea. It's a smaller plane. It has fewer seats, and so JetBlue is doing 138, I think.
So it's not a ton of people. It's not a ton of people on the plane.
Yeah.
But
maybe not even that many. It's funny. It's actually JetBlue has fewer seats on its transatlantic planes than it does on its A220s. Just think about that for a sec. And it's because the mid suites are huge and there's a lot of them, but it's a real interesting commentary on the market.
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, this is kind of along the same lines, right? Delta has announced they're going to go to Dubrovnik as well this summer, and they're going to upgrade Premium Y on their A330s and 763s. Now, I'm surprised about the 763s. We'll talk about Dubrovnik in a minute. I'm surprised about the 763s because I thought they were getting rid of them.
Yep.
Did they change their mind?
Well, they're not upgrading the business class seats on either of those planes, so take that as a hint.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that the premium economy seats are cheap enough and reusable enough. Right? They come in 2s and 3s, and any plane that they put them on is going to use them in 2s and 3s.
Yep.
That they can buy them now, use them now, get that yield premium from having the better product on board for these services, and then at some point in the not-too-distant future, when those planes are retired, move the seats over to a different aircraft.
Gotcha.
Or have them as spares, or whatever it is, but not be nearly as challenged in spending money and then reusing them as the business class seats would be. But if it's in 5 years or 4 years that they retire them, who knows if it would still be the D1 suites or whatever. Maybe there'll be another different product by then. So,
the reason I bring it up is Tokyo, London, we're both out of Portland. We're both 763s. And
all news is local, man. Right?
Yeah,
back
exactly.
to Portland every time.
Well, I'm trying to relate this to the stuff I know. It's not like I haven't left my house, quite a while.
Sorry.
So what is interesting to me though is that as they've announced, Seoul, Portland, Seoul, and they're going to restart London at some point, and they're at Tokyo is moving to Haneda. All three of those routes are going to the 330. And not the 763s. So I wonder where they're putting the 763s. Is it back in Seattle on some of those long haul routes, or do we know, or have they said?
A lot of the 763s are go to Europe, right? Out of New York and Atlanta.
Mm.
That's where a lot of them have been, and they do a lot of the transcon routes with them.
Yeah, what's super interesting to me, I mean, among other things, choosing to only do premium economy. And they're updating the bathrooms and putting mood lighting in and whatever. But even while they're doing it, they aren't guaranteeing that it's the 763s go first and the 330s start in July. I think the first 763 is in right now, or will be very soon for its retrofit. They're not prioritizing necessary specific routes to get them that I can tell.
Gotcha.
Which is a little surprising to me in terms of figuring out, like, this Dubrovnik route is going to fly on the 763 and 4 days a week, and I'm looking through the end of the summer. They're not selling a not Comfort Plus, it's a Premium Select seat yet.
And are they doing, so let's talk about Dubrovnik. Are they doing JFK Dubrovnik? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but that's one of the, right now, handful of routes that are going to be operating transatlantic that are guaranteed. And I would have thought that the company would have gone out of its way to put the premium economy seats in these markets where it knows it's going to have sales.
Yeah. To be fair, United's flying an old non-high J 763 to Dubrovnik too.
Does even non-high J have premium economy or no?
No.
But, I mean, that just means that's the default seat map. That doesn't mean that it's going to stick to that.
You think so?
A lot of the flights that get loaded with the old non-high J will actually get swapped.
Oh, interesting.
On a regular basis.
I mean, they could if they see the J demand boot. I mean, it's easier to switch to add more J and remove economy seats than the other way around, just because of what people typically buy.
Well, it's the same number of J seats on the old config, unless you talk about the high J. Right, it's just the only.
Oh, you're talking about low J, but with Premium Select.
Exactly.
Sorry,
United
called it something else.
Yeah.
What's United call it?
Plus something plus.
Premium plus.
Premium plus.
Sorry, stupid branding.
You think we know what we're talking about?
That's an economy product.
Yeah, it's economy.
It's premium economy. It's not economy plus. It's not comfort plus. It's branding, man.
Oh, it sucks. Yeah, I mean, I think. I was just randomly looking at Dubrovnik just as potentially going. We talked about this before. And Dubrovnik is not cheap in the summer as a city.
Especially knowing that it's like one of only 8 places in Europe open to Americans right now. So people there are going Scrooge McDuck with their eyes, like seeing the money coming in.
Yeah. And I have friends that live in Split, and Split's cheaper, but not by a lot.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about going to Split and then coming out of Dubrovnik. It's just cost-wise. I mean, the economy fares are about the same price as the business class fares to Dubrovnik. If you're looking, to our listeners, you're going to pay like a $200 premium to sit in business, which I think is insane. But
because economy is so expensive, not because business is too expensive.
Yeah, not because
that's $200 well spent in my brain.
Exactly. So I'm just telling our listeners, if you're looking, keep your eyes out.
But that's while the cheap inventory is there, right? They're not going to presumably sell all of it at that price.
I hope not. I mean, that's why I'm thinking I'm going to buy mine soon. Got to be able to cancel it at some point. See, look, I took care of y'all's job. I did y'all's job for you.
Wow, you beat us to it.
Oh, man. Anyway. Avello.
Makes my life easy.
Yeah. Avello is going to be flying to New Haven. I'll be the first to admit, I did not know what New Haven's airport code was. HVN. I had no idea when you put this in the show notes, Seth. And I really am surprised they're putting a hub there. So they're hubbed in Burbank, and they're opening a hub in New Haven.
That's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah, the Burbank, they placed 3 planes out there, started operations earlier in late April, early May. I don't remember which day it was anymore. It all sort of blends. And it was a 738. They have 3 of them. They're lovely. New Haven has a 5,600-foot runway, which is very short for those who are keeping track at home, and historically has actually not really been able to support reasonable operations by A320 family or E190 family aircraft, among other challenges, because of that short runway. Turns out the 73G, as we were talking about earlier, can handle it just fine. So the 737-700 will be added to the Avello fleet. They'll put 3 of them in New Haven. And what's interesting about this one to me is it was sort of tipped as likely a couple months ago when all like 80 or 100 different airports around the country applied for what's the Small Community Air Services Development Program, which is an FAA or DOT program where basically the government gives funding to small airports to help them attract new service. And the idea is, you get up to 2 years worth of subsidy money from the feds to help, basically offer minimum revenue guarantees to airlines, or some airports just want some extra advertising dollars, and they don't promise it to any airlines, and they just hope it's going to work well in the broader sense. But these programs are how a lot of small airports manage to fund growth and guarantee revenues to airlines. So New Haven asked for $800,000. as part of a $1.2 million program to attract one or more new low-cost carriers. And they specifically named Avelo and Breeze in the application. They actually named Extra, which is the certificate Avelo bought, which is, I always find a little interesting. I don't know if they were trying to hide it or it was just, that was the name of the actual company at the time, and Avelo didn't have the branding figured out before they wrote the letter or what. But that $1.2 million is exactly how much Avelo said it's going to invest in its operations at New Haven. So, and the federal money isn't guaranteed yet. So that's a little interesting and amusing to me as well. But it will be interesting for me to see how this really all plays out. But there's a lot going on. They haven't announced markets. My rough math on the aircraft performance and that runway length and how heavy it will be, depending on if it's, how much fuel it can carry based on everything else, says it's like 3.5-ish hour flights are about as far as it can go.
Okay.
So that's Florida. Maybe you get a little further than that. Maybe like as far as Chicago is only probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. So, and what's really interesting is actually because of this development program grant application, there's a ton of data from the airport authority on why it thinks it should have more service. And the DC area, including Baltimore, and Chicago area are two of the top 10 markets in terms of daily passenger, PDUs, passengers daily each way, which is how markets are sort of tracked in the airline world.
Yeah.
And they have explicitly said that they're looking to try to get either American Airlines to add Chicago and DC, or get someone else to fly it as a just standalone market, because it has the demand for standalone service even without figuring connecting travelers in normal times. Of course, right now no one knows what the hell demand is going to be and what's going to come back when and where. But you got Yale University, a lot of research, a lot of other travel that is associated with it. So there's just some really interesting data in terms of like how many passengers they think they can pick up and things like that.
So I mean, Avelo could do really well, right, out of New Haven.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously why they're showing up.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could do really well just from the case if they fly to, say, Florida or Chicago or even Dulles or DC, or BWI, like they could do really well.
That seems to be the argument that the city, the airport authority is making. Like it was really surprising to me. I actually guessed wrong as I was sort of reading through the documents and sort of seeing where they were going and trying to read ahead in my brain of where it was going to go. So the catchment area around, within a 60-mile drive, which is basically all of Connecticut, and maybe tips a tiny bit into New York, is like 5.5 million people. Mm. Of the total departures of the people, all those people who fly, it's not 5.5 million, but whatever, the total number of sort of departures that the catchment area takes, what percentage would you guess go out of New Haven as opposed to other airports?
Maybe 1%.
Yeah, 1%. It's just under 1% because there was just no service. It was U.S. Air to Philly, and then Charlotte just had been added before the pandemic and was gone again. But more than 50% go to New York City. They don't even go to Hartford, Bradley.
Wow.
That Bradley is, I think, is the next in line. But if you combine the three New York City airports, that's where most people go from. And that was what was really surprising to me.
How many of them go to Westchester, though?
Not as many. Let me see if I have the data here.
But Westchester's not an easy drive, though, right, Foz?
Well, from the population center of Connecticut, Westchester, like most of it's between Westchester and New Haven.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's not a super easy drive, just because there's not like a highway that just goes straight there. Like you don't just hop on 95 and get there. You gotta.
You can take the Merritt.
Yeah. Here we go. New Haven gets less than 1%. Islip gets less than 1%. I guess people take the ferry across. Providence is 4%. White Plains is 5%. Logan is 6%. Newark is 13%. JFK is 18%. LaGuardia is 23%. And Bradley's 29%. So Bradley is still the highest number, but combined, the New York City 3 are more than half. And almost double Bradley. It was real interesting to me.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating.
So we'll see what happens. I mean, basically, the other thing about that is that because so few people already were flying locally anyways, you fly these 737Gs like 2 turns a day, 5 days a week. There's 3 of them. Like even if you put 150, 160 seats on board, which is about as many as you can get before it's done, you're really not talking about that many passengers total.
Yeah.
Right. If you're maybe talking about 500 passengers a day. Like that, or even 1,000 a day is maybe 1,000's too many, but like just the total number of people that you're drawing away from the other markets is really low. So my theory on that is with, strategic selective day of week service, which is what Avelo is looking at for most of its initial routes, you could basically pick up all those passengers or a lot of the VFR and leisure travelers, visiting friends and relatives and leisure travelers, and not even put a dent in all the other markets that are otherwise served in the region.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I just looked at the New Haven airport. It's a single gate.
So part of this is also there's going to be an investment in extending the runway and building looks like a 4-gate terminal.
Okay. But I mean, still, it looks like the kind of airport that, you could be through. You could show up about 20 minutes before your flight leaves and be just fine.
Yeah.
So if they're extending the runway, will they start doing New Haven to Burbank?
I don't think so. There was a real consideration. I think it's not extending it that much. It's only a couple hundred feet.
They've got a little bit. They got a little bit on the south end. They could probably.
It's really, and there was a huge lawsuit over whether they would even be allowed to extend it or not, and eventually they won a court case that said they can.
Of course, because the people who built their house there, are like, we knew there was an airport here, but we bought our house anyway.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a real. I think this is a super interesting one. It's also the part where, we don't know what Breeze is going to do yet, but the part where it was also mentioned in the filings. I would be shocked if both tried to compete from there. Right, going from nothing to all of a sudden having two different airlines trying to both have a hub would be kind of crazy.
Yeah,
but I think it'll end up being a cute airport, similar to Painfield, just in terms of size. Still very nice, but compact, and even just looking at the renderings, it looks like a Painfield almost.
Nice.
So, and I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to fly out of there again. I think I flew in 4 times, but only have ever arrived in New Haven, and so I'd like to depart once.
How far are you from New Haven? Is it
not
2 hours?
Convenient.
Yeah.
This will have to be a special trip.
I was going to say also with New Haven getting service, right, like this, and Breeze, we're gonna talk about Breeze a little bit in the after show in the bonus. But with New Haven getting, is there potential? Were there other airports that won this money, or was it only New Haven?
So this isn't even the money yet. And that's the real interesting part. Those development grants have not been issued, as far as I know.
Gotcha. Okay, so we don't know who else is going to get it. Potentially, there's another airport that could.
Yeah, and typically a lot of them get it. I expect that many companies, many cities will get this. I want to say the total applied for was under $100 million. I would guess that more than half get what they asked for.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm 3 hours from Tweed, Jeeves.
Ooh, that's a drive.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come up with a real good excuse to make that trip.
Yeah, what you got to do is you just got to buy an airplane. You don't need a new car, just an airplane.
You got to find someone local up here that wants to make the trip to Tweed just for fun, and I can fly, general aviation and make that hop
for a little $100 hamburger. There you go.
There you go, and then accidentally get out there and just fly onward. But I can't pay someone to fly me there because then that would be illegal.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a couple of passings, a couple of deaths in the aviation world. So Bernard Ziegler, the man who pretty much invented fly-by-wire for Airbus, he passed just recently.
Yeah, and he was literally developed, had the idea, had the concept, made it happen for commercial aircraft.
Yeah,
and it's a big deal when Airbus itself issued a press release.
Yeah,
it
was a huge change, right? Lightened the amount of weight airplanes needed to, for control surfaces and just using servos and electronics to do it.
Instead of literally cables.
Yeah, instead of cables going through the aircraft. Huge innovation. And then the other is Helmut Jahn, and he's the architect who was responsible for United's terminal at Chicago O'Hare and the new Bangkok airport, which I've never flown in the new Bangkok, so I can't speak to it. Yeah, never have.
You've never been to Bangkok?
No.
Oh. Yeah, and it's a funny one. There was something that one day. It is a very distinctive, very notable design, and it is pretty gorgeous. But even I showed there was something on Twitter a long time ago now, but with a picture, I was like, "Can you name this airport?" And I showed it to my wife, and even she was like, "Yeah, I've been there. That one's Bangkok." It's that distinct. It's that distinctive of a terminal design. So.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
It's sad to lose such.
And actually, his was even more tragic. He was on a bike ride and was hit by a car in the western Chicago suburbs. So
awful.
Yeah. Tragic.
I'm just looking at Bangkok. Man, it's a huge airport, and two, the inside is gorgeous. Yeah, and very distinct, like you said. What else we got? Air Senegal, the carrier you didn't think you'd be talking about long haul, has announced they're going to be flying to JFK and Dulles.
Listen, man, they bought themselves some A330 Neos. It's time to put them to use.
Yeah. And when is this supposed to happen? This year?
Yeah, later this year. The part that they got approved by the DOT for, to be a foreign carrier a month ago or so, and the news came across that they got started planning the route. Two things about it that are interesting. One is they're going to do a JFK to Dulles tag flight.
Oh, wow.
It's not Fifth Freedom because they can't carry any local traffic, and it wouldn't be Fifth Freedom even if it was. I think that'd be 7th or 8th. But, it'd be cabotage. So they can't carry the local traffic, but they apparently think they're going to extend it to Dulles. And what's even more interesting to me about it is Air Senegal is not allowed to fly to the United States. Air Senegal is allowed to market flights to the United States so long as they are operated under wet lease or charter terms by a different carrier who is allowed to operate flights to the United States. And this is basically a commentary on operational safety and everything else at Senegal or Air Senegal.
That doesn't
they basically have to let someone else. Yeah, they have to let someone else handle all the operations if they're allowed to, if they want to show up.
Do they have that bad of a safety record?
I don't know offhand. But apparently, what's also super interesting to me about it is they are using, but they're still using their 330 Neo. They took one of their 330 Neos and basically gave it to Highfly to operate on Air Senegal's behalf. So it's Air Senegal painted, it's the Air Senegal interior, it's the Air Senegal everything, but it's operated by Highfly, which is the Malta-based charter operator. They were the ones that took the Singapore A380 and tried to fly it for a couple years there, and I'm
surprised Highfly would take that contract. I mean, they're known to shove more seats in a plane than is comfortable and try and put.
Yeah, I would assume that this is one where it's at a fixed price or whatever the operating costs are, and they don't have any P&L for how many seats are sold.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah,
so it doesn't matter in that sense. But it was just a super interesting collection to me of the part, especially the part where they can't fly it themselves.
Well, and so Delta already flies JFK Dakar currently, and I don't think that one connects. I don't think that one keeps going because they fly another one to where else do they fly? Is it?
I thought they did Atlanta as well.
Yeah, it might be Atlanta, and then they also have Accra, Ghana, where they fly. So, I mean, they're going to be competing with Air Senegal on this.
Does Delta actually fly it, or is it just listed?
No, they fly it. I see it operating.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wonder, is there that much traffic between Senegal and New York? I guess, probably. Right now, I can't imagine there is, but...
Well, South Africa's not flying Dulles Dakar anymore, right? So there's probably some of that traffic.
That's now not getting picked up, yeah.
Yeah.
And that basically connects all of Western Africa, right? Like the...
Yeah, I mean, Ethiopian was doing its hops via Accra and Lomé, right?
Yeah, in Lomé, yeah.
I think I went via Lomé. There was one other, I don't remember if it was Accra or Dakar, that it did also. So, yeah, I mean, there is theoretically some traffic there. It'll be interesting to see, like everything else, what comes back.
Yeah.
Can I get a call back to our discussion of the 763s with premium economy earlier?
Sure.
I went and pulled up some data from timetables. Delta's got them on Madrid, Athens, Boston to Dublin some days, JFK to Keflavik some days, Lisbon, Venice. It's a weird mix of routes that it's published on, just not Dubrovnik. Stuttgart is STR, right?
Yeah, Stuttgart, yeah.
So, from Atlanta. So, yeah, it's interesting where they're putting those planes, and it's not all season, but actually it is. Like, Boston to Dublin is all summer from July 8th, in theory, has premium economy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Not that I think I'll be going, but...
Yeah. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, a child went into the baggage system at Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yes!
Living at everyone's favorite dream.
Or worse
and nightmare at the same time.
It depends on the airline, right? It'll determine if you get lost or not.
Yeah. And the kid was, I'm assuming the kid
is fine. Yeah, I think it was like, the story is that there was like a family of 20 checking in for a flight, and everybody was like, it literally was sort of like Home Alone-ish. Just too many people and too much chaos going on, and the kid wandered over and like, oh, what's under here? And like went down the ramp or onto the belt and went down into the belly of the system.
Jeez.
Which, I've been down there and seen some of those things. There's like bumpers that move bags and stuff. They're not gentle.
Yeah.
I'd hope that he didn't get hit by one of those, or he almost certainly would not be have come out of it as just fine. But
did they have to shut down the system to get him out, or did someone down there just grab him off the...
And they said they found him in under 5 minutes.
Okay.
I didn't read too much more into the details. I just think it's hysterical.
Well, he probably got kicked out of the system pretty quickly because he didn't have a tag on him.
You'd hope.
Send him straight to the lost baggage chute.
Yeah.
Which is in the baggage claim office.
Yeah, no, I thought it just went to an incinerator.
Yeah, that's right. It's not secure. We'll just burn it. I will say, when someone commented on when I posted that on Twitter, someone shared that they used to work baggage service and used to had a system like that and would get in the big plastic bins and ride from time to time after hours. So I think that's pretty funny.
That's awesome. UK's green list of places people can't visit. So the UK published a list, right?
A dozen or so countries that you can visit without requiring quarantine on return.
So give us an example. Give us an example.
St. Helena.
Well, okay.
The Georgia Islands in the South Atlantic. Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
Which won't, Australia and New Zealand aren't allowing inbound international travelers like that, so not so helpful. I think Singapore made it, Israel, Iceland, Portugal. Portugal's basically everybody from the UK is going to go to Portugal, is what it's come down to. Some will probably go to Iceland also, but Portugal is going to be very British this summer.
Portugal's going to make out like a bandit. Good for them.
I hope so. I mean, I've got to see how it all works out in the end. And there are more. They said that there'll be an additional. In 3 weeks they'll revisit. What's hard right now, I think, for a lot of people is that it's not entirely clear what the data being used is and how they're making the decision. Mm-hmm. But it's what it is. There were a lot of people surprised and disappointed that the United States didn't make the list, I think. One comment I saw today was someone asking us on the podcast, actually, Twitter account, about if it was, we believed it was tied to Border Patrol not having enough capacity and the U.S. being too high demand a market, right? If the U.S. opened up, would the number of people who wanted to travel to the U.S. just strip all of the other traffic volume and make it too hard for the UK border force to keep up? And you've seen the stories from Heathrow of 6-hour lines to get back into the country and things like that. So I don't know. I'm not as convinced about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be overwhelming to get into the United States. I do think, it's something they're going to have to start considering and hiring people.
Yeah, and I think it'll happen eventually. Also, I just don't think the U.S. is actually quite as far along in vaccinations to justify it being a green country for, not requiring testing and quarantine on return.
Yeah, agreed.
I just when I think about okay, yes, there are bigger planes that fly to the U.S. than fly, to Portugal generally, but you're going to start seeing 737s and A320s and 321s from every dirt strip across the UK going to every dirt strip in Portugal this summer. Right? It's not just going to be a few flights from Heathrow to Lisbon. It's going to be everything, and I feel
Porto,
and I think the islands get included, Faroe down on the south coast, and then it's not just going to be London, right? You're going to see it from Manchester, you're going to see it from I'm sure Bristol and East Midlands and all of those airports. The TUIs and Ryanairs and EasyJets of the world are going to backfill as much capacity as they can because that's where people can go.
Yeah.
I do wonder if they're going to hit a limit on sort of hotel rooms at some point. This has been a big challenge for tourism in a lot of places. I don't know what it's going to be like this summer by May when Portland, Maine's got all these extra flights. It didn't have a huge hotel room population.
Yep.
So
time to Airbnb your house.
Yeah. I need somewhere to stay. But
you have a Subaru, right? You have a Subaru. Yeah. You can just put a bed in the back of that. You'd be fine.
Well, we're going camping for Memorial Day. I think I should just keep the tent and sleep out in the yard.
That's. My wife wouldn't do it, but I think Linnea would be just fine with that.
We did the car camping, sleep in the back of the car thing when we were in Iceland a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been told that that's not a good plan to repeat.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, she actually really did enjoy it. I didn't mind it that much either. When we did it, I booked the small car, and it was basically a minivan with no seats in the back and a mattress instead. And we needed the one size bigger. We're tall people, and it was getting in and out of the van with you put the luggage on the front seats when you sleep, and you put the luggage in the back seats when you're driving. But there's a cabinet cupboard system built in in the back that holds all your pots and pans and cooking supplies and everything else. It's actually very well done, very efficient design, but crawling in and out under that was awkward.
I think Iceland's the one place where I would probably enjoy it the most, just with the system of like.
It's got great campground system.
Yeah, the campgrounds like where you can get a shower and bathrooms and stuff, and it's kind of like set up for that. You just pay a little fee for that.
Yeah, it was $10 to $20 a night, $10 to $20 a night,
which is fine
for that. And some of them charged extra for showers. A few of them had like a pub in the place where you could get really bad pizza or cold beer. More importantly, when we did it, we got a grill. Charcoal grill from the car place. Like we picked the option that also included the grill. And between the pots and pans they had, and then like went to grocery stores, and a cooler was included. And so you went to a grocery store and you picked up like 2 days worth of food at a time. It stayed fresh, and I think we ate like kings. Like we had a great time. I loved every evening at like 8:00 when it's still broad daylight because we were there in the middle of the summer. Lighting up the grill, dipping into my duty-free jug of vodka, and I had a great time, like grilling langoustines, which when we were on the East Coast, the Southeast, where they're famous for the langoustines, instead of going out to a restaurant, we did go to a restaurant one night and had them there, but the next night we went to the grocery store and just got a pack of langoustines from the grocery store and like thawed them, grilled them, had a bucket of drawn butter that we dipped them in because we had a little pot and we had a block of butter. That was the hardest part, is we wanted like a stick of butter to melt for them. And the smallest thing we could buy was a kilo of butter. This 2-pound block of butter that we kept it and it was fine. And like I think when we got to the end of the trip, we'd used maybe a stick worth of it. We're like, and you get back to the campsite or to the car place and you return stuff and there's a table for like stuff that to return and stuff to take. Have a penny, leave a penny kind of thing. And so I think I put the block of butter on the counter and just walked out.
You're talking about run on hotel rooms. That brings up a good point. I wonder how much of the run there's going to be in like in Iceland for these types, the camping vehicles and stuff. Because
so far Iceland's pretty quiet, it seems. What's his name? Andy Luton is back again this weekend. He was there a couple weeks ago as well. I mean, it's still a little early season, but his pictures are showing it real empty.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to buy a ticket.
Yeah, something else to return. I think part of it is limited flights right now. The U.S. carriers haven't started loading theirs really yet, or maybe they have. I think he flew Delta this time. He flew Iceland Air last time. So it's slowly picking back up. But again, you got to be fully vaccinated and willing to travel right now, and not everyone is either.
Yep.
Or both.
Last story before we go to our bonus topic. EASA is tracking space weather.
Yeah.
Now, who is EASA first?
The European aviation, the European version of the FAA. I don't remember actually what the acronym stands for fully. I probably have it in the document if I can find it. European Union Aviation Safety Agency. Okay. Much like the FAA issues safety bulletins from time to time. And so a couple weeks ago, the EASA issued a safety bulletin entitled The Effects of Space Weather on Aviation. And I thought it was a joke, but it's the first time they've issued one in almost a decade. The last time they issued one was 2012, but they have updated it. And it provides information regarding, on the effects of space weather on electronic devices, communications, navigation and surveillance services, and human beings, and should be read in conjunction with blah, blah, blah for onboard systems. And it's talking about, like, the space weather of flows of energetically charged particles and electromagnetic radiation. They've got some really cool graphics in it too, and solar radiation. And it's what it really comes down to is it's on an 11-year cycle, and the last peak was April 2014. So it's expected to start growing again in the next few years, and can have impacts on things like navigational systems. Geomagnetic storms can have an issue helping with navigation. Solar flare radio blackouts primarily affect systems in the high-frequency and very high-frequency ranges, 300 to 300 megahertz. And it turns out that airplanes use those for communications, especially over water. Galactic cosmic rays. I was reading this and, like, part of me wants to laugh because, like, what are we doing? But it turns out that there's, like, increased solar radiation and sunspots. Just lots of interesting things to track.
Yeah, I know that some of the solar radiation stuff, as it spikes every 11 years or so, it also increases the likelihood of seeing the aurora borealis further south. So
interesting.
That is an upside to it, even though there are a lot of downsides.
Yeah, like, if you fly more, you're more likely to catch cancer.
Exactly. Yeah. That.
Yeah. But anyway, it's just like a weird, interesting document. But yes, they do in fact track weather in space.
Well, I guess someone's got to do it.
Yeah. So someone had to track that Chinese rocket launch booster that went into orbit. Finally came back down. Yeah. Just off the Maldives. So it'll be interesting to go scuba diving over there, I guess. I don't know. Did you guys see there was a bunch of planes in the area when it came down?
Oh, I missed that. Did they? So, I mean, are the Chinese going to try to recover it? Do we know?
Not that I've heard.
Interesting. Okay, that would have been awful if it didn't hit a plane.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember if it was EASA or the FAA issued some guidance like, "Hey, this is going to happen. Keep your eye out." And then, but also like, no real details.
Oh, lovely.
Like, we don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to happen later this week. So just be careful.
I mean, I don't know if you'd even be able to dodge that. I was watching it last night, and I think it was like at 18,000 kilometers an hour.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that would just happen in an instant.
Yeah, crazy.
TCAS would go off, and that would be the end of that.
You'd hear one beep, and
would it though?
It would, just briefly, probably.
Yeah. So
on our bonus topic, we're going to talk about Breeze hiring non-college kids as flight attendants, and that's going to be the topic. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you can just hang on, and it'll be there shortly. If you're not a Patreon subscriber and want to hear that, you can support us on Patreon. But again, we're happy to have all of our supporters, even those that don't support via Patreon. All of our listeners, you can find us on Twitter @DotsLines, moredotsmorelines.com. Thanks for listening, and happy travels.
Take care.
See you later.